so this is going to be hopefully a super hot topic for you. I've been around, I cover from Miami, Florida, all the way up to the upper end of the Carolinas. And I can tell you that a lot of people, they're looking at employee engagement and trying to figure out how they can actually make this a reality. And Yammer is the go-to solution from Microsoft to help you accomplish that. All right, so real quick, I want to kind of remind you what we covered a little bit last week. So if you go back to last week's session, you'll see that we do an intro to the modern workplace, and we cover this slide. And it's really helpful when you start thinking about Yammer and you start thinking about where it fits in the overall toolbox, if you will, of what Microsoft offers to help you communicate and collaborate throughout an organization. And so most things, we all get hired because we're good at something, right? So we're either creating a widget, we're creating a proposal, so on and so forth. But almost immediately, those things evolve into what we call the inner loop. Those are the people that you work with on a regular basis, right? So as an example, I always tell the example of I'm part of HR. So my HR team is my inner loop. I show up every day. We're hiring people. We're creating employee handbooks and the likes, right? So that's my inner loop. A lot of people then are super interested in, hey, how do I drive this employee engagement, right? We call that the outer loop. And so the outer loop has a lot of really key scenarios that only are solved by using a solution like Yammer. And so when you look at the outer loop, right, and this whole engagement model, it's all about scenarios like corporate communications needing to communicate out to everybody in the company. It's about hosting CEO town hall meetings. We'll show you some of that maybe as we get through the demo. Employee interest groups. So if you look at the hit list of all the scenarios, and it's not limited to these, right? These are just some of the key ones that we hear a lot of. One of the most important ones that we find, and it's not usually the one that people go after as a value prop, is this whole connecting silos. People laugh when I tell them that the Microsoft teams, engineering and marketing folks, they have one of the most active Yammer groups within Microsoft. And so it just shows you the importance of being able to connect people in the field like myself to people in the product and engineering team so that they can really respond to our customers giving us feedback. And that's the only way we have to do that. So we have a big treat with us. So usually it's just me and some other folks in the field with me that are presenting at Microsoft on TryThisAtWork. But I've got a really good friend and colleague. He happens to be one of the senior Yammer product and engineering folks out of corporate, and his name is Steve Wynn. And so I'm going to introduce Steve, and I'm going to let him kind of give us a rundown of some of the exciting things. Steve's been around since before Microsoft acquired Yammer back in the day, so he's seen a lot. And so I'd love for him to kind of tell his story and give us a little sneak peek into the strategic nature and some of the things coming up. And then we're going to demo some of those things as we go through this. So Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Brent. How's it going?
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
And Brent didn't tell me to do this, but I'm very proud of my Wobo wallet. I've got my blur on, so it's a little hard to tell, but this one's, he's Yammer branded it for some of us, so highly recommend the Wobo wallet. I love mine. But yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting times for Yammer. We continue to see lots of customer interest in Yammer, especially as you mentioned with regards to a lot of companies continue to struggle with things like employee engagement and connecting employees with their leaders. And as you mentioned, Yammer continues to be a great place to do that. We recently released a case study. We can maybe post a link to it around Goodyear, and how they talk about how their leaders use Yammer to connect directly with employees. It's kind of the go-to place to kind of get a pulse on what's happening across the company. Even Satya talks a lot about some of his daily activities include going to Yammer, getting a sense, getting a pulse for what's top of mind for employees. And so we continue to believe that Yammer is the place to connect with people across the organization. And that's really our strategy. And when we think about kind of the strengths and the superpowers of what Yammer allows people to do, it's really in that area of, number one, it's around employee engagement, leadership engagement, which is a topic here today. But of course, many of you who are possibly using Yammer today or want to use Yammer also are using it for things like community, bringing employees together that maybe do the same job, maybe they're in the same region, maybe they're employee resource groups that they use Yammer to bring people together for. That's a very common use case for many of our customers. And then kind of the third area that we're super focused on going forward is really making Yammer a much more integrated part of the suite. As Brent said, I've been around Yammer for a while, and honestly, I think there's lots of stuff that we could have been doing over the years, and we are investing in those things. And so we'll talk about some of those things, but we don't want Yammer to be just a destination that people have to go to. Of course, Yammer will still be a place that people can go to. But we also want to make sure to, again, we refer to Yammer superpowers, the ability to discover content, connect with people. We want to bring some of those superpowers to other surfaces across Office 365, like Teams, like SharePoint, and even we're doing explorations with Outlook. So we'll talk about some of those things as we go through here. I also want to dig in a little bit, Brent. You were talking a little bit about the inner loop and outer loop. And one of the things that I often talk with customers about is, Teams is a great tool to kind of bring people together to be more efficient in the kind of the project work, like you said, the day-to-day work that they do. I often say that Teams is great for cohesion. So it's great for those people that you already know, those people that you work with on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis, right? So I think it's great for cohesiveness, building effectiveness and efficiency within the framework of Teams that you do a lot of work with. And then on Yammer, on the other hand, is great for diversity. Right, so when you need to break out of that group of people that you're always doing work with, and you need broader ideas, or you need to ask a question from somebody that you don't know. I've heard one of our customers, they talk about how Teams is the place for people that you know, and Yammer's for the people that you don't know, right? If you work in an organization that has thousands and thousands of people, it's nearly impossible, even hundreds sometimes. It's impossible for you to know every person in your company. So Yammer allows you to kind of break out of the smaller group of people that you might be working with and explore and find and discover knowledge and information in people that you may not necessarily have had access to previously.
Yeah, I think that's great, Steve. And you and I talk about this a lot because I spend a lot of my time, I kind of straddle the fence between showing customers Yammer and the new shiny object, the fastest growing application in the history of Microsoft is Teams. And so there's really a great story to show or to tell. And there's actually, I love demoing this. So why don't we get into the demo real quick? And I'm going to show you kind of how the inner loop and the outer loop come together. And so to tee it up, Steve and the team on the Yammer engineering and product team have developed some super integrated powers, if you will, within Teams to make sure that when you start your morning, perhaps if that's how you start your morning, and you dive into our Hub for Teamwork Teams, that you don't have to go to another destination. Steve mentioned we want to bring the magic of Teams of Yammer everywhere, right? And so Teams is just one of those places. And so I'll get in here and I'm going to show you a quick demo. And you can jump in and ad lib as you'd like, Steve, as we go through the demo. But let me share this real quick with you. All right, so what you're seeing here is our Teams environment, right? So this is my demo tenant. And so what you're going to see is, again, we call Yammer the outer loop. So I'm in my inner loop. Let's say that I show up every day and I'm part of HR. You'll see I have this Engage tab down here. So watch what happens in Teams when I go through. Excuse me. And I click on this Engage tab. So first of all, you saw that I had some new activity because it was bold, right? And so if I come over here and I look, the first thing you'll notice is this message from Alan. And you'll see the little Yammer logo there, right? And so that is a connector that the first thing I did is I said, look, as part of HR, I want to know when somebody comes to the HR group in Yammer and engages us as our inner loop within HR in Teams, right? So I open up Teams in the morning and I can go through it. As one of my habits, I say, hey, let's see if anybody's trying to connect with us, our outer loop trying to connect with us in HR. And so when I go in here, I now get to say, hey, they're talking about the employee handbook. I know that Megan is working on that. So let me go and prompt Megan. So this is inner loop communication that started based on this outer loop connector pulling in Yammer within Teams. And so if you then shift gears and you look at what that experience looks like, here's Megan on her end. She's going to get a little pop-up here in Teams, and you'll see that it is in fact Megan, right? So this is Megan also in the browser. And so you can't tell that because I've hit F11 to make it full screen, but this is the browser experience. And so she's going to come in, and this is Teams where she's saying, hey, sure, Irvin, I'll go and follow up. Now watch, she's going to click on the brand new HR tab. That is a Yammer tab that we just released, or is releasing soon. Steve, is that available now?
Yeah, it's generally available. Yep.
Oh, awesome. And so you'll see that now she's, without leaving Teams, she's going and answering this employee that is interacting with us via Yammer, right? So it's a great kind of connector, in this tab and connector world. Really helps make it a consistent, predictable way of you working with your inner loop in Teams, and then connecting and interacting with them without having to go, if that's your desire, to another destination, right? So that seems to be a really popular way of interacting with that outer loop.
Yeah, and we introduced the inner and outer loop, I think, a couple of years ago at Ignite, and I think it seemed to resonate with a lot of folks. It started to make sense on kind of the distinction. But then as people started to explore and think about it a little bit more, people ask questions like, well, help me navigate better between Yammer and Teams, as you described, as you're showing here. And so these are some efforts that we wanted to do to help bridge Yammer and Teams together. And so far we've gotten great feedback from it. And if you have feedback for us, I'm all ears and would love to hear your feedback on these things. And we continue to work with the Teams team, the Yammer and Teams product and engineering teams continue to work closely to explore further connection points. So we're not done yet. There's much more to come. But I think particularly in this scenario, I think what's really powerful is, if you think about, we think about this in terms of what we refer to internally as kind of the front door. Within our product team, we think of this notion of front door. So if you think about kind of as Brent described earlier, if you have a human resources Yammer group as kind of the front door, where you have the broader employee set, your broader employees asking questions about benefits, or what's the policy on working from home, right? Those conversations aren't necessarily suited for the team, but better suited for kind of a broader conversation in Yammer, whereas Teams is much better suited for the kind of these back channel discussions, doing the nitty gritty work that the team needs to accomplish. And also you can configure this connector in a number of different ways. In this case, I think Brent, you've set it up to look for a hashtag or a topic or a phrase, but you can also configure it to, if you're looking for anytime somebody posts, an individual person posts on the Yammer, or there's a post from a group, you could also have that configured in the connector as well.
Yeah, and Steve, just real quick, when you're not talking, let's mute, because I'm getting people are saying, hey, we're hearing double audio. I think because we don't have headphones on. That's a lesson learned for me here. I guess the audio. Okay, awesome. Okay, so let me show you real quick how I set up those connectors, right, in the tabs. And so if I come over here and I will first right click on this Engage tab. So you'll see here's the connector that we're going to show you how we set this up. So I'm going to right click here on Engage. I'm going to go to Connector. So you can do this on any channel, by the way. And so you'll see we have a huge list of connectors that I can configure, but I'm just showing you, here's the Yammer one that I've already configured. And so all you have to do is right click on any channel, go in and add the Yammer connector. And then as Steve mentioned, you can say, hey, do I want to get alerted or bring this conversation in every time there's a new conversation? And so now what I've done is I've clicked on the plus button at the top under tabs, and you'll see this is where we added the Yammer tab. So again, that plus button is huge in allowing you to add any type of a tab within a channel. And so that's the beauty of Teams, is that Teams allows you to customize a channel to the needs of whatever those group of people coming together to get something done need access to. And so so that's great. All right, so
real quick, the other unique thing I wanted to mention about the Yammer tab in Teams that we created was the ability to share to channel. So if you're on the tab and you see a conversation that is in that Yammer group that you want to, you can actually do share to channel, and that'll bring that conversation into your Teams channel. So now you can have a little back channel. So if I see a question out there in Yammer and I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but Brent and I maybe want to have a little back channel discussion about that, we can share that to the channel. Now Brent and I can have a safe little back channel discussion about that, and then respond back on Yammer when we're ready. So again, we think that's a nice ability for people to include Teams and Yammer into their workflow.
Yeah, that's awesome, Steve. Thanks. All right, so let's fast forward. And by the way, that would be a great scenario using that share with the channel if I didn't have the connector. So if you just wanted to, again, you're getting in the habit of going and looking at the tab that represents HR in this scenario, that'd be a great way of going and interacting and sharing any post in Yammer with the team and teams. All right, so Steve, why don't you do us a favor and introduce us to this whole concept of live events, and then I'll do a demo.
Yeah, so we got a lot of feedback from our customers. Again, focusing on that scenario around leadership engagement. Our customers really wanted more rich ways to do that beyond just a conversation. So we recently released live events in Yammer, which allows a company to create a live video broadcast from within Yammer, and then be able to have that live conversation to support it. So we're really excited. This also recently went generally available to our customers, so this is available to customers today, and we're working on. We're also continuing to work on improvements based on a lot of the feedback that we've gotten. But go ahead, take it away, Brent.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Steve. All right, so you'll see on my screen here, very similar. So what I've done here is I've just pulled in the entire Yammer experience using the website tab. So that I can do things like run a live event right here within Teams. So again, I'm part of HR. We want to hold our next town hall meeting, right? From an HR perspective, maybe we're gonna launch some new employee benefits or something. And so what you'll notice is in the Yammer group that represents HR, I now have the ability to come down here and click on this, create a live event. Now this is globally available now. It's no longer in preview. And so when you click on this, what I'm doing is we're actually using Teams to produce this event, right? So I'll be the producer as Irvin. And in this scenario, like you're watching a live event right now, we just make it public facing, and I've got Steve as a presenter. And so what I'm doing, just to follow along, is I'm actually setting up a live event for someone in HR who's going to host this now in the Yammer group called HR. So again, Yammer's the outer loop, right? It's where we connect with people that we may not know. So it makes perfect sense to say, hey, we're going to have a live event, this town hall where the leadership team is going to present. Let's host that in Yammer where people can have a rich conversation, ask questions, whatever the case may be. So there's two ways that you can produce a live event. You can use an external encoder, and you can do what we call a quick start. I always show customers the external encoder because this is really exciting for people who spend thousands of dollars usually to bring people into their organization and set up these real high-end, video and audio equipment just to do a 1 hour town hall meeting with their leadership team. And so now you can do all of that driven by Teams, hosted in Yammer, and streamed by Microsoft Stream, which is a really slick experience. And you'll see all that coming together in a second. And so as I go through here, you'll see I'm going to come down and click on schedule here, and it's going to go ahead and spin that up. And so now, again, just to set the tone here, we're going to host this meeting in Yammer. We're producing it in Teams, and all the streaming is taking place using Microsoft Stream. And so if you watched any of the most recent Olympics streamed across the web, you're using the same back-end streaming service called Azure Media Services that we're leveraging here to stream the event. And so one of the things I always tell customers is live events is super cool. It's like a DVR experience during the event, but after the event, that's where Yammer even adds tons of value because that's where all the residue of that meeting is available for those who couldn't go and watch it. And you'll see that here as I go through the demo. So I'm going to go ahead and click on join the event as the producer, but I'm going to immediately shift over to Diego, who's on his mobile device, and show you what that looks like, okay? And so let me go through here. So here's Diego on his mobile. You'll see he's in the Yammer app, and he sees this little, this new notification on the right-hand side. That's indicative of there being a live event. Notice we pinned the live event to the top of the HR group in Yammer. So all he's got to do is click on it, and he starts live streaming that. And again, it's like a DVR experience where if the doorbell rings or if somebody walks in his office, he can hit pause, and then he continue later down the road. But this is me in my garage as I'm going through and producing this. Again, I'm producing it in Teams. We're hosting it in Yammer. People are going to Yammer to join it. we now have this dialogue back and forth. So we've wired up Yammer to this live event so that internally we can have a lot of Q&A. There's usually somebody moderating this on the back end. So what you're seeing here is I, as a producer, am going back and forth with Diego, who happens to be on his mobile. So there's a couple great things here, right? The mobile experience is a first-class citizen where I can go in and stream this. And again, Azure Media Services are going to make sure with Stream that you're never going to have a buffer unless you literally lose your network connectivity. So I want to show you kind of what does the after event look like? And so let's move on to that part. And so you'll see, let's say that somebody comes back to work after a big, long customer meeting, and they're like, hey, I wish I could have seen that event live, right? Well, the great news is this is what we do after the event. We host that event and notify all the users as part of HR that, look, you missed the town hall. Here's easy access to it. So I can go click on it here, or I can go look at the past events over here. We did nothing from an IT perspective to make this happen. It's just all wired up this way. And so now they can go and play back the entire event if they like, and they just hit the play button. We've got cognitive services behind this that are driving things like face recognition. So you can go in and say, hey, I just want to see where the CEO spoke. I don't care about all the people underneath him or, you know, or whatever. So I just want to go, you know, somebody mentioned that there was a great part that he mentioned something or announcement. And so you can fast forward to those. We do automatic spoken words to text transcoding, and then you can search on all of that. So it's an amazing experience that's just part of Office 365. Again, we're leveraging the power of Yammer to really host this amazing live event. And again, you get to interact with all of the conversations beneath it, et cetera. The one thing that Steve also mentioned is that, you know, Yammer is this experience that we want to bring everywhere that it makes sense. So we have tons and tons of customers that literally have their internet portals built on SharePoint Online. So one of the things the Yammer team, Steve and his team have done is they've made the Yammer web part super intuitive and a much richer experience. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here. So let me come over here to my browser and pull that down so you can see my screen. And so remember all of that interactive conversation from Alan where he's saying, hey, I'm looking for the most recent employee handbook. This is SharePoint. This is the new Yammer web part. If I want to post a Yammer, I click here. I can go in and share whatever I'd like. But notice, here's that whole back and forth right here on the HR portal, if you will. So in this scenario, the HR team has an inner loop built in Teams, but we also need kind of a curated content experience for people wanting to know what's happening from an HR perspective. So this might be where we'd hang off, you know, all of the benefits and employee handbook news that's coming. And so I'm just showing you here where we have a really simple and engaging way of leveraging Yammer in a scenario like your company portal. And then here's Stream, where I can go in and look at different training videos if I'd like. And here's basically watching a Stream video right here that's posted to Yammer, but I'm in our intranet portal for HR. And so really slick experience, again, just showcasing a lot of the work that the Yammer team has done to make sure no matter where you are, if I'm on a mobile, if I'm on a portal somewhere, if I'm on a MacBook and I want to open up Yammer, if I'm on any browser, that you have an amazing experience also, as we showed you in Teams. So Steve, we're almost at the end. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Q&A.
Yeah, before we jump into Q&A, one thing I'd just like to point out here that that you started to address is really kind of the integration and bringing all these together, especially around the piece around Stream and live events. I think one of the really valuable parts, you pointed out a lot of the great capabilities that Stream provides, but also the ability for that video to be a reusable asset, right? It sits in Stream, of course, but then you can share that in any number of places. You showed how a Stream video can show up within a Yammer thread or a Yammer conversation, but you also showed how Yammer, you can embed that Stream video right here on the SharePoint site. So that video that you capture doesn't just get trapped in a group in Yammer, but it becomes this asset that you can share in many different places, whether it's Yammer or SharePoint or elsewhere. So again, I think one thing we want to make sure you come away from with this is that, of course, Yammer is a great way to build engagement and build connections with people, but also the integrated capability that we're bringing across the suite. So yeah, let me share my screen here and talk a little bit about another capability that we are working on, which is question and answer. So, I talked about our investment in community, or our focus in community. And of course, the way that a lot of people interact with communities is to come there to ask questions or find expertise. So one of the things that we are starting to roll out in preview to some customers is this question and answer capability. So here I have a question post type, so I can, and this is again another HR example, so I could say, what is the policy on working from home? And that'll post, and it'll render as a question, and we have some visuals to indicate that this is a question. So if I'm a person scrolling through this feed, I can very clearly see that in this case Isaiah has a question and he needs some help. And then of course people can respond to it with any number of answers, but we've also created the ability to mark the best answer. So when the best answer is marked, that best answer then gets pinned to the top of the feed. And so it's very clear. So if I'm a person that also wants to know how much vacation time a new employee gets, I can come to this thread. I can see the best answer pinned at the top. If there were multiple replies, they would be rolled up underneath that, and I can always see the discussion and see all the replies that led up to that best answer. The people that will be able to mark the best answer will be the person that asked the question or the group administrator. And then there's a number of other things. This is kind of our first step with Q&A, and we have a whole roadmap of things that we want to do for Q&A that we'll talk about as we go through the rest of this year. But really excited about the question and answer capability. We want to bring that to other parts of Yammer as well. But yeah, just wanted to give you a little bit of preview of that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And we appreciate it, in the field, all that you and the Yammer team are doing to really enable our customers to transform and drive, these great communities. And it's funny, we've even seen companies that are creating new roles within their organizations just to support all the fantastic things happening within Yammer. So we see a lot of like community managers being hired and such. So we appreciate all that you and the Yammer team are doing to keep our customers transforming and connecting and collaborating, with their outer loop. So thanks again for doing that. All right, so one of the things that I just want to remind everybody of, we appreciate you coming today. I know we had a little bit of a hiccup with the audio. It seems that because Steve and I aren't using a headphone, there's a little feedback because we both have our speakers on. So we apologize. We'll fix that for next time. Speaking of next time, next Thursday, 10 a.m., we have another guest speaker, Angus Florence. He's another great rock star from, just like Steve, from our Yammer team, who's going to get on and really cover two scenarios: using Yammer to automate answering employee questions. So that's using some integration with Azure Q&A Maker and Flow and things like that. And then another one that's been really picking up steam is, hey, how can we give our employees like a check-in experience using the power of Yammer and other stuff? And so come back and join us again. It's not next Friday, it's next Thursday. If you want to go and subscribe so that you'll get an automated update on the next session, go to TryThisAt.work, not .com, but TryThisAt.work. And then you'll be able to subscribe, and we always pump out the next session shortly after we complete this morning and the following weeks. So thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks, everyone.